This is the Blaisin Access Podcast, amplifying disability perspective one story at a time. Today is Friday, February 28th, last day of February. I'm Blaise Bryant, as we have a day late and not a dollar short version of the Throwback Thursday, as we're going to talk about one of the founders of ADAPT, the disability activist group responsible for a lot of the changes and advancing disability rights, Wade Blank. So to remember him and talk about some of his work is a man named John Holland from Denver, Colorado. This is from the It's Our Story YouTube channel.
I remember I probably had some minor role or conversational role with Wade on getting funding from Henry Foley, who was the state social services director that first gave money for an experiment. It was an experimental program, and they gave these housing units, public housing units, to Atlantis. I think there were only like 12 or 15 units at the time we started. So there was kind of this coalescence that was occurring in the politics and furor of this unbelievable neglect of people that was occurring in this nursing home. I mean, there were people who were in full body casts that had flies all over their faces, Debbie Tracy. There was a guy who was described as the shortest human being in Colorado because he was amputated above the waist from untreated bed sores, and they'd kind of prop him down. RTD actually gave him a job during the struggle. He got work, and there were a lot of people eaten up like that. There were cockroaches and cereal boxes, and there was just this never-ending litany of abuse that would span the entire subject of why nursing homes are an evil social failure in the United States, which really haven't changed that much since. But Wade had come out from Kent State, where he had been shocked, horrified, and blown away by the killing of the students, and he'd been a minister at Kent State. And to recover, he took a job as an activities director at Heritage House, which was an absurd job in a way, but obviously was prophetic for his life. Because he never left that mission, and he took his ministry. I remember he used to get in trouble with the Presbyterian Church for his work, and we would, I'd help him write things to kind of explain that he was still practicing his religion. It was just in a street ministry, an actual service. And so, and I was an old religious studies major. I have an MA in religious studies, and he liked rock theology, and so we had a lot to talk about the meaning of things, and that's kind of the origin of my connection with him. So we were doing this sort of radical lawsuit to challenge the pitiful failure of the government. I mean, the government had no idea, still has no idea, really, what's happening in nursing home.
Excuse me, just shift your knees, point your knees towards the light a little bit more.
Okay.
Good.
Has no real awareness of they had no awareness of what was happening in the nation's nursing homes. And that was a big project. So Wade pretty much lent his support to that project. I mean, we took the project beyond. It was not just an Atlantis project, because we turned it into a national reform movement for quality of care upgrading in the nation's nursing homes. And we were working on that for a while, and Wade was beginning to think about access. And I was at Legal Aid as the director of litigation. And we were sitting around sort of thinking about things that weren't being addressed in the social order.
That's John Holland speaking to the It's Our Story YouTube channel about Wade Blank, who was one of the founders of ADAPT, who unfortunately died of some sort of accident. I believe it was a swimming accident in 1993, or maybe he got his disability because of the swimming accident. I had it here, and I totally lost it. So that's on me, and that is sometimes what happens. And I would rather do an authentic, less produced show than a clean, fully produced show that is stripped of its authenticity. So that is Wade Blank. And what John said there is still true about governments not knowing the horrors of institutionalization. And I was initially going to do the Flash Friday separately, but because of the conversation around nursing homes and Medicaid cuts, let's get into the Flash Friday right now. All right. On Tuesday, February 25th, Congress, by a very narrow vote, 217 to 215, passed sweeping cuts to Medicaid in a budget resolution, among other programs. These cuts direct the Energy and Commerce Committee, which runs Medicaid and is in charge of it, along with other government programs. That doesn't make a lot of sense, Energy and Commerce to be in charge of Medicaid, to cut $880 billion over the next 10 years. This is to revive some expiring Trump tax cuts in 2017. The future of Medicaid is in the Senate, where Republicans hold a 53 to 47 majority in the Senate. So right now, advocates are scrambling, to say the least, trying to figure out, where do we go from here? Well, where you can go from here is by calling the Senate, as I mentioned in Wednesday's show, talking about how Medicaid helps you or someone you know. Those personal stories really do make the difference, and enough of those personal stories, hopefully, will reverse these harmful Medicaid cuts, which impact children and pregnant women. Newsflash, those are also people with disabilities. Quick happy story to wrap things up. Congratulations to Chris Mattoon from the Seeing Eye. He received the Ethel Bender Award from the Guide Dogs International for his work helping guide dog teams. I have the pleasure of knowing Chris. He visited me a few months ago, working with Victor on some stuff, and it is very clear to me that Chris is someone who deserves this award, and I'm really happy he got the well-deserved recognition he received. So congrats to Chris, and hopefully we can do everything in our power. We have to do everything in our power to reverse these harmful Medicaid cuts. I wish there were more stories to get to, but this Medicaid one and the cuts is just so big and so nuanced that it took up much of the Flash Friday. I would say about a minute and a half, minute 45 seconds of the music. So it's a 2-minute bed. That's what we're dealing with here. And if you're in New York, like I am, you have a governor, Kathy Hochul, who is, with her Medicaid policies, putting caps on people's abilities to transition from nursing homes back to the community and be able to live independently. What she's doing, frankly, is an extension of what's happening federally. So here in New York, there's that threat too, and I'm sure that's the case in a lot of other states, especially those who have GOP congressional reps and senators in the majority. I cannot say this any more clearly. Our rights are really at a tipping point here, and we really need to do everything we can to take them back. We must take them back. We must be a united force. It is so important. Truthfully, more important than ever. So what do you think? Let me know on Facebook at Blaisin Shows. It's BLAISIN Shows. Share your Medicaid stories with me too right there. That will help, and I'll make sure to amplify those as I'm able to. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, and share the Blaisin Access podcast. That helps it grow. Transcripts are AI generated and are not perfect, but they will give you a baseline sense as to what I'm talking about here on the show. We're going to have a special show for you tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's also going to be sad. Very sad. As March 1st every year marks the Disability Day of Mourning, where we memorialize those with disabilities who were killed by family members simply because they have a disability. This is an event that is put on every year by the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. We're going to hear from the late Diane Coleman, founder and CEO of Not Dead Yet, who is probably the most passionate person I know about the Disability Day of Mourning. I had the pleasure, and have had the pleasure over the past couple of years, to plan Disability Day of Mourning events in my role at the New York Association on Independent Living. We were not able to do it this year just because of everything going on, but it is so important that we do everything we can to keep Diane's legacy alive. So we'll hear from Diane talking about the significance of the Disability Day of Mourning tomorrow as a special show. So that is it. Thank you so much for listening to this doubleheader, Throwback Thursday, Flash Friday episode of the Blaisin Access podcast, amplifying disability perspective, one story at a time. Have a great day.